Welcome back. Today we're going to cover Chapter 11, Personality. What makes two individuals have different personalities? So you could have siblings, same parents, maybe 2 years apart, and they have different personalities. That probably applies to you, or you know of someone that applies to. So why is that? Personality is the long-standing traits and patterns that propel individuals to consistently think, feel, and behave in specific ways. So you know that you react, behave, you think, you feel maybe differently than your best friend or your significant other. How would you describe your personality? Now we'll move on to some historical perspectives on personality. So we're going to rewind to ancient Greece, where Hippocrates and his medical bros believed personality was driven by bodily fluids. Yes, fluids. Blood equals sanguine, which was cheerful and lively. Phlegm equaled phlegmatic, which related to calm and lazy. Black bile, melancholic. Sad, poetic. Dramatic, Twitter user. Yellow bile, choleric. Angry, ambitious, probably the one yelling in traffic. Nothing screams cutting-edge science like diagnosing anxiety with too much bile. Honestly, your medieval therapist might have just bled you with leeches and called it a day. Galen was from 129 to 200 CE, a Roman physician who took Hippocrates' theory of the four humors and said, let's crank this thing to 11. He believed your personality was controlled by the balance of bodily fluids. For Galen, blood equals sanguine, which meant optimistic, social, possibly manic at brunch. Yellow bile was choleric, ambitious, irritable, always ready to fight a goose. Black bile, melancholic, thoughtful, sad, writes poetry at 2 a.m. Phlegm, phlegmatic, calm, slow-moving, probably still in bed. Galen thought you could literally drain or adjust someone's fluids to fix their personality. So next time someone calls you moody, just say it's your black bile acting up. Now fast forward to the 1800s, where Franz Joseph Gall said, forget fluids, let's read personality by filling your head like a melon at the farmer's market. His theory, phrenology. The brain has different areas for different traits, he would say. For example, love, courage, or sneakiness. Those areas grow based on use, pushing out the skull. You can literally feel someone's character by running your hands over their noggin. This man turned personality science into a game of braille for brains, and people ate it up for decades. Of course, these theories are nonsense now. Galen's humor theory, outdated, no scientific basis, but weirdly poetic. Gall's phrenology, discredited, but did help advance early ideas of localization of brain function, so he wasn't completely off his rocker. Think of it this way, they were wrong, but they were charmingly wrong. And without their nonsense, modern neuroscience might not have felt so inspired to prove them wrong. So there you have it. Galen and Gall, the fluid fixer and the head feeler. Together they prove that humanity has always desperately wanted to explain behavior using whatever squishy bits were trending. Two of the OG minds behind personality theory, Immanuel Kant and William Wundt. One sat in a study contemplating existence, the other built a lab to prove it. Immanuel Kant, the organized overthinker. He was in the late 1700s. His occupation was philosopher, legend. He probably owned 42 pocket watches. His idea, you can categorize people's personalities into types, and these types are innate, not based on behavior, but on internal temperaments. Kant borrowed heavily from Galen's ancient humors. Yes, still with the fluids, and he proposed a tidy little 2x2 grid of traits. Active ingredient choleric meant intense and irritable. It was a strong emotion. The weak emotion, sanguine, was social or optimistic. Melancholic, sad and reflective. Phlegmatic, calm and indifference. And melancholic would be the strong emotion. Phlegmatic would be the weak emotion. Kant was your classic type theorist. He loved structure, order, and trying to cram the mess of human personality into 4 squares. He was like the OG BuzzFeed quiz, if it had footnotes. Wundt was in mid-late 1800s. He was the literal father of psychology, built the first psychology lab in Leipzig, Germany. His contribution, he said, hey, let's stop arguing and start experimenting. Wundt took Kant's personality types and asked, can we measure this? He moved away from types and into dimensions. Emotional versus non-emotional, and changeable versus stable. This gave us personality as a spectrum, more nuanced, more scientific, and less obsessed with balancing your bile. Basically, Wundt took Kant's grid and said, cool, but what if we need to use a ruler? He wanted to put personality on sliders, not boxes. Kant gave us structure and the idea that personality can be categorized. Wundt gave us a method and the idea that it can be measured. Together, they're the start of personality psychology's awkward, pubescent phase. Not quite philosophy, not quite science, definitely still judging your temperament. So whether you're deeply melancholic or just mildly sanguine, you can thank Kant for labeling you and Wundt for turning that label into data. Enter Sigmund Freud, the man who turned couches into confessional booths. His theory includes the id, ego, and superego. Id would be your primal desires. Eat that cake, fight that guy. Ego would be your reality negotiator. Maybe don't punch your boss. Superego, your moral compass. You're terrible for even thinking about cake. He also talked a lot about repression, defense mechanisms, and psychosocial stages, which age about as well as unrefrigerated mayonnaise. If you ever blamed your life choices on childhood trauma and an unresolved Oedipus complex, you've already been Freudian. He was also very focused on the unconscious part of our brain. And you'll see here the id, ego, and superego, and we get into a little bit more depth of that here. And here as well. Here are the defense mechanisms. And here are the psychosexual stages that I was referring to. And now we get to Adler. Adler was once a member of Freud's psychoanalytic posse. Flatly said nah to Freud's libido obsession. Went on to pioneer individual psychology, which sounds lonely, but actually means whole person psychology. Adler is the guy who left the cool club because he believed humans were driven not by desire, but by purpose, like a motivational speaker with a medical degree. The inferiority complex was Adler's signature move. He believed we all start out feeling inferior because, hello, we were helpless babies, and life becomes a quest to overcome that feeling. Some people cope in healthy ways, building skills, developing confidence. Others not so much. They overcompensate, get all bossy, and possibly become middle managers. Inferiority complex would say, I feel less than. Superiority complex would say, so I'll act better than you. Basically, we're all trying to prove ourselves to ourselves, and some of us are just louder about it. Adler also famously said your personality is shaped by where you rank in the Simpling Olympics. Firstborn, responsible control freaks. Middle children, rebellious diplomats, or just very tired. Youngest, charming attention hogs. Yes, we can see you. Only children, little adults with big vocabularies and a superiority complex built in. Is it scientifically airtight? But is it scarily relatable during family reunions? Absolutely. Adler said we all develop a style of life, our unique way of striving for significance. And we're driven by what he called fictional finalism, a made-up goal we believe will give our life meaning. Once I get that job or car or mansion or pet or alpaca, then I'll be fulfilled. Adler knew we're all chasing an imaginary finish line, hoping it solves our inner drama. Newsflash, it doesn't, but the chase is the point. Adler's work laid the foundation for humanistic psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, modern counseling and coaching practices, and possibly every self-help book titled Become Your Best Self. Freud gave us complexes, Adler gave us goals, Jung gave us symbols, and I give you this episode. Moving on to Erik Erikson. The man who mapped your entire life into 8 dramatic stages. Think of it as the hero's journey, but with more emotional turmoil and less sword fighting. He was a student of Freud, but with less Oedipus and more optimism. He emphasized social relationships and identity. He gave us one of the most enduring lifespan theories in psychology. He believed personality develops through a series of conflicts, and no, not the Twitter kind. Erikson basically turned human development into a video game. Every life stage is a boss level with a personality upgrade or damage. So let's walk through them. Each stage equals a conflict. Resolve it, you gain a virtue. Mess it up, good luck untangling that in therapy. Stage 1, trust versus mistrust, which is infancy. Stage 2, autonomy versus shame and doubt, toddlerhood. Stage 3, initiative versus guilt, preschool. Stage 4, industry versus inferiority, school age. Stage 5, identity versus role confusion, adolescence. Stage 6, intimacy versus isolation, young adulthood. Generativity versus stagnation, middle adulthood. Stage 8, integrity versus despair, late adulthood. Erikson's 8-stage roadmap to being a functional, flawed, and fantastically complicated human. If you feel like you've skipped a stage or two, congrats, you're normal. Life's messy. Just remember you can always go back and patch the bugs. Carl Jung. Freud's psychic offspring. He said our unconscious is collective, that we all share universal symbols and archetypes. The hero, the shadow, the wise old man, the girl who reads tarot at Starbucks. It's like a cosmic hard drive where everyone uploads their dreams and mythology, basically the original shared Google Doc of humanity's soul. There's extroversion versus introversion. Then we move on to Karen Horney. She was born in 1885 in Germany, just in time to argue with every male colleague she ever had. She was trained as a psychoanalyst, but quickly realized Freud's theories were hella male-centric, and secondly, neurosis weren't just about sex and childhood, they were about society. She didn't just break the Freudian mold. She melted it down and turned it into a statue of a woman not defined by penis envy. Freud said women experience penis envy. Horney said women just envy status and power because those were historically denied to them. So a paraphrase of something she might say. If women envy anything, it's not anatomy, it's opportunity. Boom. That sound you hear? Every woman in your Psych 101 class clapping. In one of the most glorious clapbacks in history, Horney suggested that men might actually suffer from womb envy, envying women's ability to give birth and create life. So Freud said women were jealous of dangly bits. Horny said men were jealous of uterus-level superpowers. I know who I'm betting on. She developed a theory around basic anxiety, the feeling of being isolated and helpless in a hostile world. To deal with this, people developed neurotic needs like moving towards people, moving against people, moving away from people. So why did horny matter? She took psychoanalysis and gave it something Freud never did: context, compassion, and a brain that didn't assume every woman wanted to marry their dad. She challenged the status quo, redefined neuroses, and paved the way for a more inclusive, insightful view of personality. If Freud was the founding father, she was the brilliant aunt who called him out over dinner. The behavioral perspective. Start with Skinner, the man who believed free will is a myth and that you, me, and your dog are all glorified vending machines for behavior. He was born Burris Frederick Skinner, born in 1904, probably already carrying a clipboard, Harvard psychologist, radical behaviorist, lover of boxes. He believed everything we do is shaped by reinforcement. You're not deep, you're just reacting to a long history of reward and punishment. Try not to take it personally. Skinner reinvented the operant conditioning chamber, better known as the Skinner box, to study behavior. The rat would press the lever and get food. Pigeon pecks the disc and earns treats. Human post-tweet and receive dopamine. Basically, he trained animals to respond to stimuli so reliably they'd put your online habits to shame. Skinner's work still pops up everywhere: education, reward systems, token economies, clickers and lectures, parenting, sticker charts and consequences that definitely backfire, workplace bonuses, promotions, or being ignored forever, tech addiction, intermittent reinforcement on your phone. Yes, apps are Skinner boxes. Enjoy. Skinner may not have believed in free will, but he believed in patterns, and those patterns run our lives more than we like to admit. So whether you're pressing a lever, swiping for likes, or chasing praise from your boss, congratulations, you're being conditioned. The social cognitive perspective, where psychology finally admits that your thoughts, your actions, and your audience all matter. Let's give it up for Albert Bandura, the legend who turned behaviorism on its head by adding one tiny thing: thinking. Behaviorism. We do stuff because we're rewarded. Bandura. What if we do stuff because we watch others think about it and then try not to look stupid? This ended in the social cognitive perspective. Bandura took Skinner's rat maze and added mirrors, group judgment, and a running commentary for your brain. Key idea: we don't just learn through doing, we learn by watching. Observational learning. The Bobo doll experiment is where kids watch adults beat up a clown doll. Guess what? The kid said, "Cool, I'll try that." Yes, we studied violence with inflatable toys. Science is wild. So next time you blame a kid's behavior on TV or TikTok, congrats, you're thinking like Bandura. Reciprocal determinism, the triangle of destiny. Bandura's big model of personality has 3 parts: behavior, environment, and cognitive factors, which would include your thoughts, beliefs, and insecurities. Each one influences the others in an eternal loop of, why am I like this? Imagine your thoughts, actions, and surroundings in a 3-way tug of war, except everyone's winning and losing at the same time. Self-efficacy, confidence, but make it measurable. This is your belief in your ability to succeed at something. High self-efficacy, I got this. Low self-efficacy, I will die and be replaced by someone who got this. Self-efficacy is why two people with the same skills can walk into a situation and have totally different outcomes, because confidence isn't just a vibe, it's a psychological variable. Julian Rotter and locus of control. Personal control and locus of control. Internal locus is I control my fate. External locus is fate controls me. Or if you were to say Mercury's in retrograde, whatever. Your locus of control decides whether you take charge or blame your horoscope. Either way, Bandura says you've learned that response somewhere. The social cognitive perspective reminds us that personality isn't locked in a box. It's dynamic, performative, and deeply affected by the people sitting in the metaphorical audience of your life. Julian Rotter was the man who turned your personality into a tug of war between fate and effort and called it a locus of control. He was born in 1960 when the most popular form of psychological insight was still, have you tried fainting? He introduced social learning theory in the 1950s. He combined behaviorism with cognition and said, hey, what you expect to happen might just affect what you actually do. Rotter walked so Bandura could run, and so the rest of us could finally explain our life choices using fancy charts. Rotter's big claim to fame is the locus of control, which is basically a psychological GPS that tells you how much control you believe you have of your life. Internal locus of control, I make my own destiny. You believe outcomes depend on your choices, effort, and the occasional caffeine-fueled plan. External locus of control says life just happens to me. You believe luck, fate, powerful bosses, and weather apps are running your life. If you got an A and said because I studied, internal. If you got a C and said the teacher hates me and Mercury is in Gatorade, external. Walter Mischel is the guy who shook up personality theory, questioned your self-concept, and made marshmallows a threat. The marshmallow test. Trust issues begin here. His greatest hit, the marshmallow test, in the 1960s. Preschools were placed in a room with a marshmallow. They were told you can eat it now or wait 15 minutes and get 2 marshmallows. What happened? Some ate it immediately, some waited like tiny Zen masters, some sniffed it, licked it, stared at it, like it owed them money. This wasn't just nap time roulette. It was a groundbreaking look at self-control, delayed gratification, and the inner lives of children plotting dessert strategy. Michel's big controversial idea. Behavior is inconsistent across situations. Your so-called traits are less like concrete and more like mood rings. Example, same kid might be shy in class but loud at home. You might be honest at work but lie on your dating profile. You know who you are. Michel basically told the psychology world, your beloved trait theories, cute, but they're incomplete. And the room full of psychologists gasped in neurotic unison. Humanistic theory, let people be beautifully complicated. Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow said, hey, maybe people aren't just broken instincts and trauma. Maybe they're capable of growth, love, and self-actualization. Maslow's hierarchy of needs start with food, and then you work your way up to enlightenment. Rogers' unconditional positive regard, accept people, even Chad. Humanistic theory, the first personality model that doesn't sound like it wants to diagnose your soul with something terminal. Abraham Maslow was the creator of the famous hierarchy of needs. He said we're all striving for self-actualization to become the best version of ourselves. But first you have to eat, sleep, and not get chased by metaphorical lions. Needs go from physiological, safety, love and belonging, esteem, to self-actualization. He basically said you can write your novel if you're starving and lonely, which, valid. Rogers developed person-centered therapy. He believed in unconditional positive regard, which your therapist actually likes you, for example. Said we all have a real self and an ideal self. The goal is to bring those together. Therapy style, I hear you, you're valid, let's unpack it. Carl Rogers would never ghost you. He'd make reflective eye contact and wait until you were ready. Core beliefs of humanistic psychology: humans have free will, people are inherently good, focus on the whole person, not just symptoms. Self-concept matters a lot. They believe your worst day doesn't define you, your childhood trauma doesn't doom you, and your therapist shouldn't judge you for crying about your dog. Critics say, of course, not everyone bought into the sunshine. They felt maybe it's too idealistic, not scientific enough, and can't always measure self-actualization with a clipboard. Biological approach or perspective says your personality isn't just shaped by your thoughts or your traumas, it's shaped by your brain structure, neurochemistry, genetics, and that one time you got dropped on your head. It's the psychological equivalent of turning off the vibes and turning on the MRI machine. Genetic influences. Twin studies have shown that genetics account for 40 to 60% of personality traits. Identical twins separated at birth, still both weirdly obsessed with vacuuming or knitting or existential dread. So if both you and your brother are neurotic and allergic to commitment, it might just run in the family. Babies are born with temperament, natural tendencies like activity level, emotional reactivity, sociability. These form the foundation of personality. Later experiences just decorate the house. If your toddler has been throwing tantrums since day one, congrats, you've met their biological baseline. So whether you're calm, impulsive, neurotic, or have an inexplicable obsession with true crime, the biological approach says your brain and body might be calling more of the shots than you think. Somatotypes, what are they? In the 40s, William Sheldon proposed that there are 3 primary body types and each one comes with a matching personality profile, like a depressing human Build-A-Bear. Endomorph is your body, your personality, and how you think. Mesomorph is your body, your personality, and how you think as well. And so is your ectomorph, your body, personality, and your think. So endomorph, your soft, round, more fat storage as far as your body. Personality, a more relaxed, sociable, love comfort, possibly eating mashed potatoes right now. The way you think, Santa, but with more emotional openness. Mesomorph, your body is muscular, athletic, naturally strong. Your personality, assertive, bold, energetic, possibly bench pressing a bear. With thinking, every action movie protagonist ever. Ectomorph, with your body, it's thin, narrow frame, fast metabolism. Personality, anxious, introverted, thoughtful, probably overthinking the entire theory. Think the nervous kid in every coming of age indie film. In other words, Sheldon decided your entire essence could be boiled down to your body fat percentage and whether or not you'd enjoy CrossFit. So somatotypes remind us that humans have spent a lot of time trying to make personality visible, preferably with a tape measure and a clipboard. Are you your body type? No, but according to Sheldon, you might be your body type's mood board. Trait theories. Trait theory says personality is made up of traits, stable, measurable characteristics that predict behavior across time and situation. So no deep dives into unconscious trauma, no Bobo dolls, no birth order nonsense, just cold, hard adjectives. You're not a tortured soul, you're just low in conscientiousness. You don't need therapy, you need a spreadsheet. Gordon Allport listed over 4,000 traits. Raymond Cattell narrowed it down to 16. Then came to the big 5, or ocean, which includes openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. These traits are the backbone of modern personality tests and also the reason HR knows you cry when plans change. Hans Eysenck said personality is rooted in biology and gave us the Penn model: psychoticism, extroversion, neuroticism. Jeffrey Gray developed the BIS-BAS system, behavioral inhibition or activation, also known as your inner stoplight system. Hans Eysenck was German-born British psychologist, legendary for being opinionated, prolific, and allergic to psychoanalysis. Sybil Eysenck was a psychologist in her own right, co-developer of the Eysenck Personality Questionnaire. Together, they created a lean, mean, three-factor model of personality. While Freud was analyzing your dreams and Jung was playing with symbols, the Eysenecks were in a lab saying, "Cool story, let's test that with bar graphs." The Penn model. They believe personality could be boiled down to three core dimensions: psychoticism, which is linked to aggressiveness, creativity, and antisocial tendencies. Are you in misunderstood genius or a potential villain spectrum? Extroversion, you are outgoing and energetic, sensation seeking. Low extroversion equals introvert with a well-stocked emotional library. Neuroticism was emotional instability, anxiety, and mood swings. High neuroticism, you've cried over a sandwich, and that's okay. So basically, the Eysenck said, you're either chill or neurotic, introverted or loud, and maybe slightly unhinged, depending on your psychoticism score, a triangle of truth, if you will. They focused heavily on biological basis of traits. They claimed introverts have higher baseline cortical arousal. Extroverts, in contrast, seek stimulation because their brains are quieter than a public library on a Tuesday. In short, Eysenck said your personality wasn't a mystery. It was your nervous system screaming, or not. The Eysenck's gave us a tight, testable, biologically rooted trait model that tried to predict everything from shyness to serial murder with just a few data points. Were they right? Sort of. Were they bold? Absolutely. Are we still filling out their personality questionnaires online at 2 a.m.? You bet. Here's some visuals. 2 factors to account for variations on our personality: extroversion, introversion, and emotional stability versus instability. Here's the 5-factor model and the hexaco traits. So how does culture impact personality? It's one of the most important environmental factors. Some examples: Asian cultures, they're more collectivistic, tend to be less extroverted. So they tend to work more as a group. Central and South American cultures tend to score higher on openness to experience. And then Europeans tend to score higher on neuroticism. So again, these are just averages, general, not specific, because obviously even within the Asian culture, there are varying personality types. It's a visual of some regional differences. Individualistic versus collective is individualistic. You'd probably tend to think the United States in general would be more individualistic. So if somebody graduates from college, we tend to congratulate the graduate, not necessarily the whole family. Individualistic people tend to value personal achievement over the group. Collectivistic is more of group setting. So anything that is accomplished, everyone's going to be congratulated for, or we're going to be proud of everyone, and it's a less independent type of culture. Self-report inventories are personality tests. You may have taken the MMPI or another type before. The Likert scales is another type of personality test. Here's an MMPI visual. Projective tests include Rorschach, thematic apperception test, which is the TAT, which this is a visual of the, I'm sorry, this is a Rorschach here. And then the Rotter incomplete sentence blank, or RISB. You may have taken these kind of tests before. It's different type of tests that you might take for a job, a career, or maybe your therapist may give it to you as well. We talked about Rotter earlier. This is an example of the types of questions that would be on the RISB. So there's a visual for that. And that concludes chapter 11. See you next time.